Hello, lovelies. This is 5 Minute Manifesting. I'm your host, Lovey Brown. Thank you so much for listening. Yesterday, we talked about noticing whether you're doing the work, what you're learning when you're listening to manifesting content, or are you not? And sometimes it can be hard to bring awareness to where you are on that spectrum. And even sometimes, I didn't say this yesterday, but I want to say it today. I find myself doing the same thing, even though I know that if I do the work, it works and I get what I want. And so sometimes I find myself not focusing the way that I want to on the end result that I want to have, or embodying, or whatever sort of technique that I'm drawn to using that particular time. I said yesterday we would talk about today what your job is the rest of the time. And I also was listening to some manifesting content yesterday, and I heard a creator say, don't make this a part-time job. And there's nothing wrong with what she was saying, what she was suggesting in terms of don't make this too hard. Don't make this feel like you have this extra chore to do. And that, I think what she was encouraging her listeners to do is good. I'm not disagreeing with her necessarily. However, I do think if you're so far removed from this way of thinking and you're learning about it, I do think there's a portion of your journey where you may have to be really intentional the way you are when you have a part-time job to do the stuff. To really apply what you're learning. And that's kind of what I was getting at yesterday. And not that I want you to make a schedule and commit to this like a part-time job, but if that's something that appeals to you, because honestly, the idea that I'm doing my focusing work on this, as a commitment, as a part-time job, if you will, is really appealing to me. That doesn't feel any sort of way that's negative or hard. It's really appealing to I've put this in my planner and I've planned my day around doing these manifesting techniques. And, I know that they've worked for me a lot of times. So I'm really excited to try that. So if that appeals to you, then do that. If that doesn't appeal to you, if the energy of this is like a part-time job doesn't appeal to you the way that appeals to me, then yeah, you should shift into a different way of looking at what you're doing, like how you're doing it. Because she made the point yesterday, and I'm going to make it here today, that we're doing this all the time, whether we realize it or not. And that's true. So the way you've been up until this point you've been manifesting your life. Your inner world, your internal world has been reflecting out into your external world. And that's how you've created the world that you're currently living in. That you've selected the reality that you're experiencing. And if you don't enjoy that reality, or you want to tweak that reality, you're going to have to do some internal, I call it work, to choose something else. Now, it can be pretty simple. It can be pretty, I don't want to say easy, even because it's not necessarily easy, although theoretically it really is. It's not hard. You're just choosing something different internally. And then you're sticking to that. You're maintaining that. You're really living into that. Now, the thing is that doesn't take, so earlier we called it kind of a part-time job. That doesn't take all of your time. You still have a whole life to live. And very often the people that get kind of bogged down in this are really just a little bit bored. And that's okay. I'm very often bored. I have some strengths and some ways of being, my personality, that lends itself to boredom, because I really appreciate novelty and entertaining myself and that sort of thing. So if you're like me and you just tend to be bored, you do have to be pretty intentional about the rest of your life too. Not just your manifesting. Because I mentioned yesterday, and I said we would talk about it today, that the rest of your job is living your life and really putting yourself in a mindset of enjoying whatever that life currently is. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to enjoy things you don't enjoy. You don't have to enjoy negative circumstances. You don't have to enjoy whatever's happening. But you do really want, I believe, to put yourself in a mindset to start developing a mindset of choosing things you enjoy as much as possible. And when you're faced with something that is not enjoyable, that you really don't enjoy, that you really need to be intentional about, oh, I don't enjoy this. I wonder if there's something else I can choose. Can I choose to look at this situation a different way? Can I choose to shift my internal state somehow or another to get a different circumstance in my life reflected to me? Is there something else I can just put my focus on, put my attention on, so as little of my attention as possible is on this circumstance? And so that's what I really think the rest of your job is when you're not doing the focusing work for your manifestation. So the thing is it never really goes away. It's really not a part-time job. It's really a full-time job, noticing who you're being, noticing the thoughts you're thinking, noticing the thoughts that you're choosing, and then being intentional about what you want to pick. And when you're not practiced at it, it sounds like it could be hard, but once you start practicing it, it becomes easier. And I think that's one reason I believe in affirmation so much, is that that's just an easy way to intentionally choose what you're going to think for a certain period of time. I'm going to say this affirmation for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 5 minutes, however long, and that's really going to saturate your mind. I find that when I commit to an affirmation, that it really kind of pops in my mind other times. And it helps me choose to think that thought on purpose. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. Thank you so much for listening. May you manifest exactly what you want.